So, Brian, I heard you had a closing yesterday.
We did. Official this morning, though. The seller had a remote closing, and it didn't happen until last night. So the funds were all, recognized this morning.
Funded this morning.
Yeah, finally funded this morning. Yeah.
Now, there's a special story with this property, Brian. What's the story? What interest rate did the buyers close with?
Essentially 2.8%. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you kind of take us from the beginning? Like, what's the story? How did this all come to be? How did you get them a 2.8% interest?
Just to go to the buyer's side, it's a young couple. She happens to be active duty Air Force, lived near Lackland, and they wanted to be within a half-hour commute for both. The husband who works at the medical center and she working at Lackland. They didn't want an HOA, and they had a price range, $250,000 to $300,000, and they currently lease off of Marbach, so they were kind of interested in the west side of San Antonio. We started looking. Third house we went to, they loved. I went back, ran the comps on it. It came in much lower than what they were asking for.
Okay.
So I reached out to the listing agent and just explained that, hey, we'd like to make an offer on this, but we feel that the price is too high.
The value was not connected.
Yeah, the value wasn't there, and we weren't sure that it would appraise, especially with it being a VA loan.
A VA, okay.
So the agent then went back to talk with the seller, and during that conversation with the listing agent, I asked him, with it being so close to Lackland, is this an assumable loan?
So you brought it up. They didn't advertise it.
They
didn't propose it. So you instigated the conversation about that potential as an assumable loan.
I was going to ask, how'd you find it?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it wasn't. There was nothing in the description. There was no, but it was something that the appraised value was about $15,000, or the CMA.
A little bit above what it should be at. So you thought maybe, and then you looked at what on CRM to see how much they owed.
Right.
And it was pretty close.
Yes.
Okay, so you identified that it was an assumable loan. Did that other agent really actually understand anything about the process?
He didn't. Well, I shouldn't say that. Well, he went back, asked the seller if it was assumable. The seller then went to the loan, or to the
the lien holder.
Right, to Mr. Cooper, found out that it was assumable, then came back to us and said it is assumable. And for us to be able to put in, and we asked, would he be willing to accept an assumable, the addendum for loan assumption? And they came back a day later and said, yes, they'd be very interested in this, if it raised our offer price.
Yeah.
And that was what he was looking for. And during that conversation, he was underwater when it became really clear that he was underwater at that point with the loan, which he got in 2021 at the lower interest rate, and with the property values, just not
going up.
Right, not doing, no appreciation since then.
Now, dealing with the assumable loan, okay, you've now created an opportunity for this. You've started the conversation on it. What were kind of the next steps that you took?
Yep. So getting permission to talk to the lender to be able to do the loan assumption addendum. A lot of that information has come from the lender. The seller agreed to allow me to call Mr. Cooper, the mortgage company, confirm the interest rate, get the payoff at loan balance at that point, and I was able to put all that information consolidated into the addendum.
When it comes to the contract, what do you need to do? What is different when you're doing with an assumable loan?
Well, not having third-party financing.
So you take that form out?
That form, we did not. It was just the addendum for loan assumption.
By the loan assumption addendum.
Seller disclosure, there was no HOA, and the 1-to-4.
Now, when you're going through this process of dealing with an assumable, it's like you go under contract and then you apply essentially
Yes.
to the. How was the application process with the lender very similar to a normal application process for a loan?
It was, a lot of it was done through their portal, which is typical between Mr. Cooper and the buyers.
Okay.
And then at some point during that upload, Rocket Mortgage became involved.
Okay.
And if you didn't know, October of last year, Rocket acquired Mr. Cooper. So once everything, the loan officer for Mr. Cooper cleared it, everything then went to Rocket, and they started working directly with the buyers
Okay.
to get them qualified.
So my other question was, okay, so how did you make it work? You said at the beginning that it, according to your CMA, is priced a little bit high.
Yes.
Now they're asking for a certain amount over because you're buying the rate, basically. You're
Yeah.
you're giving them consideration to get that rate. How did that work if it was
So
already high?
we still didn't come in at the price they were asking, but the buyers knew what they were going to come in with, just as a down payment, as part of cash, with the original offer. And so we used that number to dictate what our new number would be.
So they came up with cash.
With cash,
Okay.
yes. To kind of bridge what the list price was versus what the
What
loan.
they owed.
Yeah, what the
So
loan
the,
amount
so the
was.
seller is not literally bringing money to closing just to close the deal.
They ended up bringing money to
Oh,
close
they
the deal.
did.
They did.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they had
There
to get
was-
out of there.
Yes.
They had to
and,
get out.
and that's where, that's when it was definitely clear that the
Truly were
seller
underwater.
was underwater. Whether that was related more to the closing cost that they were, paying, it ended up being a significant. They got their escrow back, but they had to wire money last night.
The reason the VA loan is so in this like really not beautiful state, but like there's such an opportunistic process is you have to put if you do 0% down, as you know, with a VA loan, you roll the funding fee into the note. So it makes the principal, the balance higher than almost any other loan you're going to get at that time if you do 0% down. And then if you don't have the market to buffer with the growth in the market to buffer that out, you're going to be underwater.
Right.
And that's what happened with them is the market just didn't grow enough to deal
To
with that.
absorb that amount.
The funding fee and the interest rate's phenomenal. Everything else is great. And if I'm to greatly summarize, the client was able to come in and get that loan for what was it? What was the final?
2.8. Yeah,
Wow.
2.79 was
Wow. That's crazy.
And their monthly payment, without the insurance and taxes, was $1,100 a month.
Wow.
Yep, and that with that, it's roughly, once you add the other two components in, it's about $75 to $100 more a month than what they're currently leasing their house for.
Can I ask how much did they pay for that rate?
How much?
How much extra did they pay for that rate?
Essentially $17,000 to include the earnest money. The $2,600 that they put down, or
About maybe a little. They
26.5,
paid
yeah.
about maybe 10, 15K above what we
Yeah.
thought the CMA was placing the home at
Right.
in order to make it work to gain that rate.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And that's what they were going to come in with their cash now. So that's what really made it work with them when they started looking. I mean, they got married last year. They've been putting money away, knowing that they didn't have to put money down with the VA, but they wanted to be able to put money down.
Yeah.
And so that was probably about $4,000 more than what they were going to initially do. But to get that rate, they were more than happy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
that's a life-changing opportunity with
Right.
the interest rate being that low versus 6%. I mean, 3% a year. Let's just say it's 250K, which it's not, but just as
Yep.
you're looking at $7,500 a year, like difference.
Right.
That's
and that was
insane.
when we did the math, or when we ran the numbers. So we had the CMA. We knew what we were going to come in for at price. And I had done just an Alamo title app, to tell them roughly what they were going to have to come to closing with and what their monthly fees were going to be. And it was probably $600 less.
Wow.
How did
Yeah.
the client feel at closing?
They're ecstatic. Yeah,
Nice.
they are really happy, and they're getting into the house today. So that's what, and yeah.
And the
it was
seller
really
probably
win-win. Yep.
probably lost a little bit less because they got a little bit more.
Yep, they did, and he wanted his
Yeah, it's a
commitment
win-win.
back. So the big thing is that he gets his entitlement back from
Yeah.
the VA, which I
Yeah.
think nobody really discussed. I knew it, and I think the buyers knew, and it came up during the discussion at closing, that it frees up his obligation, and now he's got his
Lets him
title.
move on with his life.
Yep, and have his full entitlement, if he goes and buys another home. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Brian?
But the loan,
Yeah.
the hiccups though, is you're dealing with a lender that's really not, well, I think with the acquisition from Mr. Cooper to Rocket, you have to have patience, with the
How long
lender.
did it take you to close?
They had so this was the lessons learned. We were originally going to close on the 28th of May, last week.
Okay.
They'd notified us 3 days beforehand that it's their policy that all assumables close between the 3rd and the 14th of the month, because they want to make sure that that first month, or that month, or the first day of the month, mortgage payment is made.
Gotcha.
So they want that buffer 3 days after the owner pays that before you can close. And they don't want anything after the 14th, because then who's paying the first of the month? So that was the first hiccup, which then delayed us to Wednesday. We were supposed to close on Wednesday. So and according to the loan assumption officer at Rocket, is the last piece of the puzzle is we need confirmation that the seller has made their 1 June payment.
So there's a timing factor
Yes.
in this to get this
So-
all to click together. So a little more patience, a little more time by both parties is needed.
Well, and
That's not
then
bad.
here's-
For a complex deal, you're only delayed a week.
But
That's not bad.
then if you go back to last Friday, that was the last day of the month, they submitted the payment. Rocket didn't recognize it till after 5 o'clock on Friday. So they didn't send the disclosure, the final docs to the buyer to review till Monday.
Oh, wow.
Which meant that we weren't in our 72-hour window. So instead of closing on the 3rd, we got pushed to the 4th yesterday. And it got back and forth with Title and Rocket on Monday, because Title had submitted all their documents on Tuesday. And we realized Monday that it was the payment being recognized in Rocket's portal happened after 5 o'clock East Coast time, which then shot out the acknowledgement to the buyers on Monday, and that 72-hour was now Thursday.
There's these little pieces
Yeah,
that have to
really,
come together.
and I would suggest anyone doing an assumption, put it before the 14th, but don't make it as close to their requirement.
Yeah.
We
Be
set it
a
to
little
be-
flexible with closing.
Yeah.
and
We
set
had
expectations.
another assumption closing about a month ago, or no, closer to 2 months now. And to talk to your story, very different. They did not have a timing issue with the closing. This was a different lien holder, so they didn't have those types of issues. But there was a special approval process and a specific individual managing the assumption process, and they were swamped. And so, like, this was like waiting for these basic responses from the lender, where something a normal lender you'd call, get an answer immediately.
Right.
And like it was a 60-day closing, and it was very stressful. But
Yeah, and this one
different,
ended up
just
being,
different. Yeah.
I went back and looked last night. It was essentially 2 months. So March
Yeah.
7th is when we signed the contract, and we're into June, and so actually 3 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it took a while, and it's really complicated on the lending side, because they had 4 players on the lending side. They had an assumption, coordinator. They had a loan officer. They had somebody in the background working with the underwriter. And then there was a 4th Shannon. There were 2 Shannons in the whole thing that didn't come into play till Monday. But it was like there were, and you could call the first Shannon, who's the assumption coordinator, and she's like, I'm looking in the portal, and then you call Don, who's the loan officer, and
Yeah.
he's like, I'm looking in the portal, and they don't, and they're all remote. They're all
Yeah.
working remotely. One's in Detroit, one's in Virginia, but we pulled it off. Yeah, and
There you go.
they're
Congratulations,
excited.
Brian.
Yeah.
What a win for your client.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. That's why we have these stories like this is to showcase the kind of complexity that people can experience in a transaction. And guys, great agent.
Yeah.
It takes
Uh,
care, coordination, professionalism, intelligence, and wisdom to bring these
Communication.
pieces together, and a tremendous amount of
Patience.
patience. Well,
Yep.
well done, Brian.
Yep,
Well
thank you.
done.
Yep, thanks.